The real agenda of educating our black children.
Community service roles I've been in, and they're informal roles often that make the big differences. It's not just the formal education for the black child. There's a whole human being that needs to be sorted out, and each portion of that child needs to be informed, whether it's experiential or it is through a book and you're learning through someone else's experiences and observations, or it may be how you take in things like music, literature, art. Interaction, socialization is a part of this education. Knowing what to do with your body of knowledge. There is a connection. The education is supposed to, for every one bachelor's degree, it's supposed to affect 25 other people who are supposed to gain from that body of knowledge. But I don't know how often that's happening because people are busy and trying to make lives and careers for themselves. Education is not just for profit, but we tend to go in, get education in order to access opportunity. My grandmother told me the first 25 years of life are preparation, and that preparation is for the living of the next 50. And that's what I hope that black children get. More preparation, more time to grow and develop themselves. We're becoming wiser by the day, but we seem to neglect what our children need. They need some direction and some guidance, and I hope that happens.
So definitely when you're talking about educating, black children, I think, as of late we have been putting too much of an emphasis on college education as far as pushing that onto, black boys and girls. Definitely, I do think we need to start moving in the trade route. Because definitely we do need our doctors, our lawyers, our engineers, but we also need our carpenters, our plumbers, our electricians. Those are fields that are well, high paying, as well as better suited for, some individuals in our community.
The real agenda of educating black children.
What can the slave master teach you except how to be a better slave? Is a quote by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I think this is a compelling question when we look at the real agenda of educating black children. In ancient Egypt, there was no such thing as public or compulsory education. Most citizens were farmers, manual laborers, and yet some civil servants. Education was for the elite few that would serve as teachers and various other leaders within the government. A major reason is because the Egyptians didn't need everybody reading and writing to ensure standards and keep everybody on code. Those trained in the temple were exposed to a three-step process: initiation, illumination, and perfection. These are all documented in George James' classical text, The Stolen Legacy. Contrast that with today, where instead of Africans running the world on the seat of throne, are being seated in jail cells. How was Africa the highest civilization in antiquity and only a few had access to education compared to now, when schooling is available to all, and yet we are the most oppressed people on the planet? How is a culture that controlled who could write and read and speak superior to one where people are guaranteed free speech? How is it possible that the race that brought civilization to Europe and lit its streets from 711 to 1492 is now left in the dark? Perhaps the answer could be found on a signpost in the Rosenwald Foundation in the early 1900s. Julius Rosenwald was a European Jew responsible for building the Negro schools in the first quarter of the 20th century.
The word in their bill is don't feed the teachers. So remember that phrase. That hangs up in them foundations. It said right on the wall, don't feed the teachers.
Yeah.
And then the subline is feed the dumb and the ambitious. Now, Julius Rosenwald became a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation in 22 after distributing more than $4 million or less out of his pocket to build schools for Southern blacks. Now remember that book. I mentioned this book here because this is the book that will show you exactly everywhere that Rosenwald put that money, everywhere the Pew Foundation put their money, everywhere the Rockefellers put their money. It's in a chapter called Educational Development. And in that chapter, it just lays out tons. It says the education of the Negro, however, has continued in the hands of whites, and the Negroes themselves being largely the objects of such efforts. This results from the fact that in the main it is a concern of the government, and Negroes are not permitted to figure conspicuously in this sphere. The philanthropists are not to be blamed for this. They are merely dealing with the situation as they found it. The public functionaries believe that it ensures to their special program to direct the mental development of the Negro along the lines which is not prejudicial to their interest. To develop the Negro along the lines which is not prejudicial to their interest.
His sign read, don't reward the teachers, reward the dumb and ambitious. Supervision of Negroes and leaders in the city of Detroit. As few people know, but should be concerned and aware of, in any community, the governance and the control of structures like education is heavily defined by the business community. Those with the most money have the authority, have the ability, and have the will to determine and dictate what the policies will be. In Detroit, you have people, the most powerful people in the business community, that have direct access to the folks in charge with the governance of the district. And they either directly or through emissaries or representatives can send them money, can bribe them, can make sure that on whatever side of an issue, they'll be motivated to vote in favor of what the power structure wants them. And on the other hand, you have this. Mr. Dan Gilbert, the man who is the Quicken Loans CEO, it says here in the Free Press, he finally completes a new Wayne County jail and courthouse. The subheading says complex will house 2,280 bed jail, juvenile detention facility, and offices. Okay, let's think about this. What implications will that have? What does that have to do with education? I was talking to a school board member recently, a former school board member, I should say, who was documenting the influence and the dominance of people in the business community on the agenda of our black children in cities like Detroit. And I was asking about the uniform policy. In specific, I said, what are the uniforms the kids are wearing in Detroit? What kind of lot in life, what kind of jobs, what kind of opportunities are they preparing them for? Because the uniforms the kids wear in Detroit public schools, for instance, pretty much khakis and a shirt. And she was processing the question. She quickly responded, it's preparing them for jail. Or a job at Burger King. Or a job at McDonald's. So then I asked her, I said, what about the uniforms of children at schools like Country Day, Orchard Lake St. Mary? When they're wearing uniforms, what do they have on? And she said, or at some of the schools educating the Marians, the Reginas, what are they wearing? Those young ladies are wearing skirts. They might be wearing dresses. The young men at Country Day, Orchard Lake St. Mary, University of Detroit, they're wearing shirts and ties. And so what is that preparing them for? It's preparing them to be CEOs, managers, head of companies and corporations. It's preparing them to be part of the leadership class. That's a totally different reality. So, keeping that in mind, now let's see what the leadership structure is.